Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, in today's stream, which, sorry, one sec. My apologies that for one I was late. Second, I had to reschedule, and it's funny because so I just before this, well, a few hours before the stream, I was like, oh, well, I can adjust my schedule and then this will be more accommodating. And then I realized I actually set up a scheduling conflict. So um, today it was supposed to be at 1 o'clock. I scheduled the rest to be at 1 o'clock. Or wait, well, not 1 o'clock. What is, so 3 p.m. Eastern. And I realized that I actually have to go back to the 2:30 p.m. Eastern. So, anyways, um, so all the streams that you see scheduled for future Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern, they're actually supposed to be 2:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm gonna have to adjust that. So, anyways, so I created a scheduling conflict for myself today, and moving forward, but it'll all be fixed and I'll figure out today. So today we are having a look at trade bait for this current season. So basically, the upcoming free agents come this July 1. So this off season that's coming up, and I just want to make sure of one thing here. I did not include it, but anyways, so I'm going to be referencing Cap Friendly because that's the best source for all this stuff, and so I'll be taking a look at the pending free agents, both UFAs and RFAs, for this coming July, and giving my opinion on what they're worth and if the teams are going to be able to re-sign them, and then just my bet on if they are going to re-sign them. So I'm going to have to remember to add that link to the description afterwards, but it's all right. I need to pull this up, and I think that's it. So I can share screen now. So as always, my criteria is, or criterion is, of what the types of players I look at. So for example, on new signings and extensions and things like that, I really only look at 5 million and above because those are most impactful. So players on lesser contracts, really, I typically don't look at and won't look at. In this case, I might, depending on the player, but that's kind of my cutoff point of where I'll discuss and stuff. So I've already got it pulled up here. I believe I just need to double check that I did choose. So it's the free agents for 2024-25. Do I include? Yeah, so it does have all of them. And then so I have the stats from last season because this season's not going to give us anything really as a reference point. So the highest paid forthcoming free agent is going to be Steven Stamkos. Already he's expressed displeasure, I combined the two words, with lack of contract negotiations at this point. So it'll be interesting to see. So he's the captain of the team, but he's getting older. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. So he was on a very reasonable salary. Signed it back in, it was effective 2016-17. So after a number of decent seasons. At the time, it would have been maybe on the high end of market value, but still relatively reasonable. And then over the span of the contract, definitely reasonable at this point. So so great cap hit. Now, like I said, at the time maybe it was slightly high, but he produced, so prior to that, like 60 goal season, 51. So I mean, uh, if anybody's going to get that kind of contract, it would be Stamkos. So great contract, I would say, or at the very least reasonable. Um, oh, and how's he done as of late? Because I think it's around, yeah. So he's been still like 30 plus goals per season. Obviously, moving forward, you would expect it to slightly decrease. Players still play well up until, well, like the top players. Well, you see with like Crosby, for example. He's what? He would be 36 or 37. I think 36. No, 37 by now. So, no, wait, 36. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So he's still playing well. And yeah, you can probably get into like 37, 38 if you're a good player and still play quite well. Um, so anyways, and look at that, over a point per game over his career. Half a goal per game, which is pretty stellar. So, of all players to get paid well, he would be one of the most important. So, now the question is can Tampa afford him? They are, says 7.7 million in cap space. Is that actually true? So it's LTIR, but isn't he 9.5 million? So how's that math working? 7.7. That's almost the equivalent to Seabrook and Brown. I don't know. In this case, it's above my pay grade to know the exact nuances of cap space, but essentially they don't have cap space. And then moving into next season, what did they say yet what the cap is for next season? $87.7. Oh, that's projected, is it not? It is. So we don't actually know So there's supposed to be about 4 million extra in cap space. Where are they at right now? 64 plus 165 75. So they basically have like 9 million in cap space. Stamkos was making, that's if the salary cap increases the way it's expected to. So basically they just have enough to sign Stamkos. And the problem is that so over the span of his contract was maybe expensive at the beginning, cheap now. With inflation, he's probably supposed to get, theoretically, at the very least, the same amount of money, maybe a raise. Probably not a raise given his age, but I would argue probably about the same, in which case they don't really have the cap space to re-sign him. Given all like the rest of the stuff. So there's a lot of UFAs, RFA, not that important, but yeah, basically in all likelihood, they're going to be super tight on their cap space, and unless he takes a discount or like gets less than market value, then it doesn't seem like they'll be able to re-sign him. So yeah, so I mean, in this case, it seems quite possible that Stamkos gets moved. Whether or not he will, I don't know, because he probably wants to retire uh, as a Lightning player. But I mean, I don't think that necessarily means anything, because if they're not going to sign him at the amount that he wants, then it's just not going to happen. So I don't know what's going to happen with Stamkos. It seems at the very least possible that he gets moved. I would almost say likely, because they're probably not going to move anybody to create space. Hagel, they just re-signed. Sheary, they just signed. Janot, I think they just gave an extension to. Paul, not that long ago. Cirelli, like it's all, everybody's basically locked in except for Stamkos. Defense extended. So I'd say it's almost probable, unless he takes a big discount, I'd say it's almost probable that Stamkos gets traded. So he's definitely on the board, I'd say, for trade bait. Where he would go to, that's a whole different story, because not a lot of teams have cap space. And then it would probably be one for one kind of thing. So what do they call it? Like a hockey trade, I think it's the term people often use. So we'll see what happens there. Pedersen, did he not get extended? I thought he did, but anyways, so he's an upcoming RFA, it said, I believe. Yeah, they have boatloads of cap space, so it should be no problem to re-sign him. I would be shocked if they didn't re-sign him. So it doesn't really require more analysis than to predict that they're going to re-sign him for pretty much whatever they negotiate. I was going to say whatever he wants, but same difference, really. So not much more to say about that. So Pedersen's probably going to be re-signed. I don't know how in any world he could ever get traded. So Nylander is an interesting one because Toronto doesn't really have the cap space. They never have the cap space because they just, I think it's so horribly managed, even with the new guy. God. So next season they have 43. I should have left up that. Just as a reference. So 87 and a half. So they'll be, so that is 53, about 54, 55 million spent. So that means they have about 12 million. This is all just rough estimates. 12 million in cap space. Mind you, they'll be missing Nylander, Bertuzzi, and Domi in that cap hit. Liljegren would need to be re-signed. Brody, oh God, Brody, Klingberg. So they already have like no cap space, and they would need to Samsonov. They don't even have a team. So, I mean, what did I say they would have? 53, 54, 55. Wait. No, I did the math wrong. So, did I do the math wrong? 55. Sorry, yeah, so it's 22 million in cap space. Nonetheless, just you take a look at the number of expiring contracts. I mean, what is this here? 7, 12, 15, 20 already, 24, 25, 28. And we said, 23 million or whatever it was in cap space. So basically, long story short, they got no possibility of keeping whatever current mix they have. Of all people, Nylander is probably supposed to fetch a decent salary. 40 goals, 87 points in 82 games, already nearly like 2 points per game. So it's basically certain that, so market value would probably be something like, I don't know, maybe 9 million at the very least, upwards of 10. I doubt you would go more than that. Maybe on the low end you could get him for 8, but that would be a bit crazy. So Scheifele, what was he that he just recently signed at? Do we have a Winnipeg thing to pull it up quicker? I guess not. Oh, I could have done it that way. Because wasn't it 8.7? Oh, 8.5. So, I mean, for example, and he's got basically the exact same production as Nylander. I mean, maybe slightly less, maybe, but I mean, it's basically the same. So really, like I was estimating, 9 million is probably market value. I'd say 8.5 is cheap for Scheifele. So, yeah. So, I mean, to re-sign all those guys, to get a good goalie, to do anything, they're going to be struggling. So, because he's the most expensive asset, I would say he's probably the most likely to get moved. So it's not necessarily that they're going to re-sign Bertuzzi or Domi or any of the other guys. It's just that when you already have so much spent on the most expensive players, Matthews, Tavares, Marner, then it becomes unrealistic to try to sign another guy at ballpark 10 million. So it seems extremely unlikely unless he takes a discount. I think he already did basically when he did his most recent contract. So 6.9, that was started 2018. Yeah, so after a couple decent seasons. So I would say maybe it would have been market value at the time, but long story short, I just don't see any possibility that they can afford to keep him unless they really mess around with their ability to sign other players. So I would guess that Nylander's going to get traded. Could they use him straight through the playoffs to just get that value out of him? Maybe. I'd say it's unlikely because you want to get something back. But so I would say it seems because you need to have defense and they need to sign like at the very least 9 million, maybe towards 12 million on defense, leaving like 11 million between all the rest of like their second line players. Like it's just no chance. There's no chance. So it just doesn't seem possible for them to re-sign him, as far as I can tell from, or it would be poor management, I would say, to re-sign him. Poor management as it is with what they have, but yeah. So expect Nylander to be on the move. I would be surprised if he isn't traded. So, so that's that. Reinhardt, it feels like Florida would have to re-sign him. I think he's been great for them. 20 to 30 goals a season, around a point per game. So similar sort of story to I was going to say Scheifele, but maybe like a lesser player in terms of productivity, not necessarily an overall performance. So in all likelihood, he's at a reasonable contract would be something like 8, preferably less, maybe like 7.5, 7 is what I'd try to go for. Just would he sign for it? I don't know. So that's ballpark what he should get paid, and I mean he already got paid that, so you would think that it would be a raise because his his production stayed about the same. So, but with inflation, nonetheless, he probably would get a raise, and so I feel like they would want to keep him. He's a pretty well-rounded player. What do they have? They have boatloads of expiring contracts. With a lot of moving parts, I have no idea what Florida is going to do in this case. So I can't even predict based on the number of upcoming free agents. Reinhardt, Cousins, Lundell, Forsling, Mahura, Montour. Of all the most impactful players, so I have no idea. Tkachuk, the cap hit was perfectly reasonable for him. Barkov, I'd say the same. Luosterainen, good extension. Rodriguez, good cap hit. Verhage, good cap hit. So, I mean, it seems like they'll make wise decisions. Again, I would be surprised if he leaves. It feels like they've got something relatively good or trending well for chemistry. So I would expect him to be re-signed, but with so many moving parts, he could easily be moved. Who knows is the story. But they have a lot of work ahead of them with all these contract signings, and they better get them done during the regular season, because to maintain the team that they had going to a Stanley Cup final, it just would not be possible. And if they delay it too much, then they could be in real trouble. So I would expect that he would get re-signed, but you never know, just with everything that's going on. So I'd say it's unlikely, but who knows with their circumstance there. Murray, I don't even know if it's worth talking about. Gensel, as far as I'm concerned, you would be nuts not to re-sign Gensel. So cap space, they're gonna have it. What is that? 61, 66, maybe 67 ballpark. So about 20 million in cap space based on the projected cap increase. Joseph shouldn't be expensive. Ruendel. Carter shouldn't be expensive if they do re-sign. So, I mean, they have the cap space to re-sign him. They definitely should. So it's just a question of how much. Based on his production, like, I mean, he's, I think, one of the most productive players. I thought he produced more than that. Well, he's definitely above average for the higher performing players, like 40 goals. Because I was thinking he'd have these stats. So 40 goals, 44 assists, 84 points in 76 games. I thought that was what he was getting consistently. Maybe I'm anchored, I guess, mentally to his like playoff performance, because, like, for example, 21 points in 12 games, 21 in 25 back in his rookie season. So I mean, he's basically the exact match to Nylander in terms of performance. I would argue he's probably a better player. Again, I would have to watch these players and specifically compare them, but from what I've seen, from what I know, he would be better than Nylander. And so, would he get more? Would he take a discount to stay in Pittsburgh? I have no idea. So they can afford him. Is he going to get paid $10 million? Probably what his market value would be. So somewhere between 8 and 10, something like that, 10 and a half maybe. How old is he? 29. So I would be surprised if he doesn't get extended. They don't have any reason why they wouldn't be able to from cap space. So I don't expect him to be moved, but you never know. So that's him. Myers on an expiring contract. It's going to be difficult to move for his performance at $6 million. So maybe if somebody eats up salary, he could get moved. I don't know if they're going to want to re-sign him. So they would probably hope to move him. What you would get back, I have no idea, because they're not going to be competitive this season, as far as I can tell. So maybe move for a bag of pucks. No offense, but yeah, that could happen. Henrique, same sort of story. I could see him getting moved. Again, not necessarily that he's not worth keeping. It's just that with his age and cap hit and Anaheim's current circumstance being kind of a developing team, in all likelihood, you would want to capitalize on the value of the asset rather than re-sign here. So, and at that cap hit for his performance, I'd say it's, his performance is less than the cap hit, but with prorated salary come trade deadline, I would say it would be likely he would get moved, and I think he'd fit in well. He'd be a good, third, fourth line center. So we'll see what happens, but I could see that happening. Mantha, he's one of those guys that I don't think his performance has been consistent, and yeah, it hasn't been very good. So at that cap hit, I put him in a similar boat to Myers, obviously a forward instead of a defenseman, but maybe difficult to move for the cap hit and his performance. But it doesn't seem like they're going to want to keep him, just in my prediction. So, yeah, if somebody can eat up some salary, so like maybe another one of those Chicago picks up some of the cap hit and somebody else gets him. So I could see that happening, but I just don't know if his value is good enough. He's probably just going to expire. Myers, maybe I'd say, is more likely to get traded because he's useful enough. Whereas Mantha, I don't know if he would be useful enough to a team to justify trading away an asset. So, but we'll see. Eberle, that's an interesting one because his cap hit is very reasonable, 5.5. He's a pretty consistent scorer, like 20 ballpark goals a season. Maybe half a point per game, somewhere around there. Decent playoff performer, like consistently a higher percentage points to games than regular season. So, or it's similar maybe. I don't know. Anyways, seems like a good player to keep. He's 33. Still should have good years ahead of him. I think they have cap space to do it too. So what is that? So that's 31, 50, 3, 60. 60. So they've got what? 27 ballpark million in cap space. I mean, lots of people to re-sign. So whether or not they would extend him, it's hard to say. I don't know how good of his fit has been. Like, this is one of those, it would be really based on internally how they feel he's fit in, I think. Regarding if they would extend him. So, so I have no idea. This is one of those ones where I have no way to figure out what they would plan to do with him. So, yeah, they have other guys expiring that don't seem any more of a priority except for Beniers. beyond that, everybody's kind of equally useful. So I have no idea in this case what he would get extended at based on the performance. Maybe a slight raise, but probably somewhere around 6 million. 7 million maybe on the high end. So in all likelihood well, actually, sorry, I should say I have no idea, like I said before. So that's what I can say, at least in all likelihood, what he would get re-signed at. Whether he's going to get re-signed, I have no idea. This one's difficult to know. Would they want to save that cap space to maybe try to upgrade somewhere with another free agent? Who knows? They're not rebuilding, so they want players now, so it would make most sense for them to keep them, probably, of all the options that are out there. So, but again, I have no idea. It's probably going to be an intern. Bertuzzi at 5.5. I very seriously doubt he's going to stay in Toronto. I mean, based on his performance, he's not really worth more than that, depending on how he performs. So if he's back at this 30 goals, 62 points in 68 games, then he's worth like the, up to Nylander kind of money. But he's been very up and down, and it seems like only one season where he's produced like that. So, or it is where he's only produced like that for one season. It seems like it could be an anomaly. So what's going to happen with him? Who knows? I would say it's unlikely he's going to re-sign, because he's probably not going to re-sign at the same amount. He probably just wanted to play in Toronto. He's probably he's from Ontario. So, so I don't know. Another one of those I don't knows, but just with their cap space, it seems super unlikely. Whether he gets traded by the deadline, again, no idea. Depends on how he fits. If he fits well, then they probably won't. If he doesn't fit well, maybe. What they would trade for, I don't even know, because it would probably be a downgrade. So it just seems like he's just going to expire with the team. So if I had to take a guess, he's probably not going to be moved, but who knows? Man, I'm running out of time. I still have a bunch to go through here. So Teravainen, it's basically, I would be surprised if he doesn't get re-signed. His production hasn't been that great. Probably worth something like what would he be worth? Maybe around a Nylander contract, but not quite, because he's been very up and down. So yeah, no, not quite. I would say probably something like around like what Scheifele got. So maybe actually I would probably go less. So maybe something like 7.5, probably on the high end. 7, maybe 6.5 on the low end, because he's young. In all likelihood, he's going to get signed at something towards the higher end. So yeah, and I think they have the cap space to do it. Yeah, they have so many expiring contracts. What did they re-sign Stahl for? Yeah. So I would be surprised if he's gone. Maybe based on his track record, they they could maybe trade him because maybe he hasn't lived up to expectations, but um, I don't know. I would kind of be surprised if he gets moved. We'll see. I don't know. Personally, I would probably trade him, but maybe they would find him more useful than what they could get back. So another one of those we'll see kind of deals. Zucker probably going to be a rental because I think he just did a 1 year contract with them. Verana, wasn't he? I thought it wasn't he bought out or something. No, he was just traded. So I'm confusing with the other guy that I think was on the player assistance program. I forget the name, but anyways, so he's for cap hit, pretty decent performance. Missed a lot of time it looks like though. He played in the AHL, so I guess I don't know what's going on with him. Um, Probably, I'm guessing, could be traded as a rental to a team. It seems like because St. Louis, I don't know if they're going to be competitive, and I don't think he's going to be like a long term fit. So just based on being moved down to like the AHL and stuff, I don't know. So he's probably going to be traded away because I think St. Louis, they basically just went a step younger and they're probably going to want assets as opposed to keeping that player. Uh, so I feel like he's going to get moved as a rental, but it's hard to say. Martinez. How's his performance been? So he's had some good seasons, 32 points in 53 games. Seems approximately like a 20 to 30 point defenseman, which is decent. 5 million's a good cap hit. Oftentimes, I feel like defensemen get overpaid, so I wouldn't be surprised if he would get some sort of higher salary on the extension. Like, I mean, man, Theodore at 5.2 is super cheap. 8.8 for Pietrangelo is, for me, on the high end, but, what does he produce? Yeah, 50. Nah, actually, that's probably reasonable for his performance and well-roundedness. So, I don't know. Can they afford him? They have a lot. Again, same sort of story. A lot of expiring contracts. Marchessault would get a raise. Stevenson, I think, would get a raise. Oh, definitely a raise. So it just depends on if they can kind of fit it in with all the expiring contracts, and it almost feels like they can't. Yeah, I really don't know. That's going to be tough. So they could. It's one of those because they're going to be competitive again. They could just let it expire with hopes of trying to win another cup. I don't know. Because they have enough serviceable defensemen behind him that I could very well see them letting him go and just dealing with what they have. So it's hard to say. Another one of those hard to say what's going to happen with him. But I would say it's unlikely that he gets traded by the deadline. So Where are we here? Martinez. Same thing like Marchessault. Same sort of story. Tyler Johnson, probably a rental maybe. Brody, based on his performance, I have a feeling like they're probably not going to re-sign him. So it's probably going to be just let it expire because they want to be competitive. Like, unless they can get a decent asset in return, they're probably just going to let it expire and then figure out somebody else for defense. Silverberg, maybe a rental. Cap hit's reasonable. Like, not for, I don't think his performance has quite been where it's has been in the past. So another one of those ones where if somebody eats up the cap hit, could get moved to a competitive team. Ski, I think is how you pronounce it. So he's worth more than his current cap hit. He's probably worth, at the very least, something like 6.5. Probably would fetch like 7.5, maybe up to 8. Something like that. So there's a pretty big range for defensemen. It really depends on their defensive skill as well. And I don't know them well enough to have much of a judgment. So again, they have a lot of cap space that's going to be coming available. So it just depends on if they're going to decide to keep them. They versus the other defensemen, they have 3 locked up. So is he expendable? Probably, based on who else they would have behind him. So it's hard to say. But again, it's probably one of those, they let him expire for his usefulness as opposed to trading by the deadline. So Tarasenko just did a 1 year. I'd say if they're set to make the playoffs, they keep him. If they aren't, then they're probably going to trade him. And there's some more behind them. Hannafin, I don't know. It seems like nobody wants to stay with Calgary, so I could very well see him getting moved. Lindholm, same story. It seems like nobody wants to play in Calgary, so I could see both of them moving. Mind you, who was it that just extended? Backlund. So I don't know. Will Calgary? It's probably, if things don't go well, I could very well see both of them getting traded and then trying to pick up some young assets, maybe to take a step back. But I have no idea with Calgary. Like I said, it doesn't seem like anybody wants to play there, so we'll see what happens there. Perron, same as Tarasenko. If Detroit is going for the playoffs, they'll probably keep him. If they aren't, then he'll probably get moved. Olofsson, I don't know what Buffalo's cap circumstances. Lots of expiring stuff, lots of space. Doesn't look like there's too crazy to re-sign. So I guess it's probably a similar thing to like the circumstance with God, I'm gapping on his name now. Eberle. Probably, if his fit's good, they're going to keep him. If not, then it's hard to say. And then, yeah, the rest are kind of below my threshold for discussing. Pavelski, I had Dallas as one of my favorites to potentially win a cup, so I I very strong, unless they're going to miss the playoffs, I very strongly doubt they're going to trade him. To Foley, if they're going to miss the playoffs, New Jersey, they're probably going to trade him to get assets. And I have them missing the playoffs, so I could see that happening. Nietzsche's, I'm certain Carolina is going to re-sign him because he's performed well and he's pretty consistent. Okay, maybe I overspoke. So the 41 and 53 and 71 and 82 is what I was expecting for all his seasons, but 40 and 70, it's a bit low. So, but in any case, Teravainen, if I had to take a guess. So, was it Teravainen? Give me a sec. Yeah, Teravainen, yeah. Any other ones? Montour, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with Florida. They've got so many expiring contracts. Stevenson, I would say probably performed over expectations. They're going to have a really big cap crunch from the types of players that are expiring there. So like Stevenson, Marchessault, Martinez and all that. So it's tough to say what's going to happen with them. Arvidsson is supposed to be, well, it sounds like he's going for back surgery, I thought I heard. So he might not even be available. Any other players? Duchesne, same sort of story as Pavelski. He's probably going to stay unless the wheels completely fall off. What else? Domi's probably going to expire on his contract because he was so cheap. Maybe they could re-sign him. I could see him staying at a discount. Wheeler probably staying again through the whole season because he's so cheap, and I don't see New York missing the playoffs. Barry, because Nashville's probably, if I had to take a guess, going to miss the playoffs. So I could very well see him getting moved, and he would be a great asset to pick up and super cheap cap hit. So I would say of all people, he's probably one of the most likely to be moved. Super valuable, and the cost is probably going to be quite high for that reason. So expect to see him moved, I would predict. DeBrusk, I don't know if they're going to... What's Boston's story with cap space? 35, 55, 60. So they got cap space to re-sign him. And it just depends on where they assign Worth, because they've got enough defensemen locked up and enough relatively decent forwards. It just depends on where they put their weighting of importance. If they're going to put it on defense, maybe, spend something higher for another, like a fourth defenseman. Or if they assign it to forwards, which I would say is probably the wiser decision. So we'll see. I don't know. The fact that he hasn't been re-signed, and he was just put on a short-term extension. So I don't know. The fact that he hasn't been extended, it's hard to say what's going to happen with him and them. So, and then below that, there's probably a bunch of other guys that could be. Let's just quickly say some of my gut instincts. Wait, let's do it by point per game. Novak, I I don't know. Could be a flash in the pan. Could get traded. That one I really would have to look at more. Middle stat. Same sort of thing. One good season. Who knows what's going to happen there. He's young, though, so probably would keep him. It's just cap hit if they can keep him and afford him. I don't know. Sprong. So there's so many of these guys that you just really, it's going to come down to fit with the team and if they're going to want to keep them. So it's hard to say. With pretty much all the rest of them, it's difficult to even really discuss anymore. A lot of it's going to come down to fit. So really in the end, I think the biggest, most likely to be moved, probably Stamkos, probably Nylander. And then the rest from there, maybe a couple of the Calgary guys if they don't make the playoffs or they're not going to make the playoffs. I would say those are the biggest trade bait out there. Of course, we'll see. It's really hard to predict because it's all going to depend on performance and negotiations and stuff like that. But I very likely, I don't know, maybe Stamkos is a tough one to really say, but Nylander I think is pretty certain, and I don't know. A lot of it I think is in the air for different players. So anyways, so I think that's where we'll end it. I don't know if I necessarily gave the clearest of predictions, but a lot of times it's really, like I said, it's going to come down to fit with the team, and it's hard to say because I don't know what it's like in the locker room, what it's like with management and things like that. So, so we'll leave it there. If you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. The channel homepage has upcoming streams on regular NHL content. So there's going to be one tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, doing a recap of the first week plus of the NHL season. Otherwise, the rest of the schedule you can see there. For things that can't schedule ahead of time, like franchise mode, that schedule's in the About section of the channel. It runs Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I think it's 10:30. Time do I do it at? Or is it 8:30? Yeah, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Be a pros whenever I have time or feel like it. Any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions likewise. And we will see you guys later tonight. Wait, what time was it? Give me a sec here. I forget what time I said. Anyways, it's at midnight tonight for a recap of week 1 plus of the NHL season. Cool. Sorry. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys then. Okay, bye.